Well, hello there, everyone. Hoping you can hear me a little bit better with this new microphone setup. So I'm going to have to get confirmation that you can indeed hear me. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is my first time trying to do a live stream with this better microphone, so I'm hopeful that there is improved quality of sound. Let's just turn this volume down. Jump on the streamies myself. Hopeful that, let's see. Derp to dirt to teely tum. And sounds perfect. Damn. Yes, I know. Does it sound better? Is there an improvement? Does it not sound like I'm swimming underwater while I'm talking to you? That's what Cecil very jokingly described it as. But that's my boy. Gotta make sure everything's going good. And okay. So my homie Malito, que paso, brother man? Hope you're doing good. Dead Zone, first King book I've ever read. Love it in my tops, in my top 5. Yeah. We've also got Benjamin Kennedy. I love this book. It also features one of his best endings. Yeah, and that's something we'll definitely get to because of the fact that everybody always criticizes King for the fact that he can't stick a landing, but this ending it's like perfect, man. It really is. And so I read the book earlier this month, and then as I tend to do, I'll read the book in like the first 2 weeks of the month, and then the second 2 weeks of the month, I'll pop on the audiobook and I'll listen to that just to make sure it's all nice and fresh, by the time we get to these. Because, excuse me, if you were joining us for the very first time for whatever reason, this is an extension of the Hail to Stephen King, obviously, YouTube show that I've been doing this is the 177th episode of this show, which is just crazy for me to think about. I've been doing it for nearly 3 years now. But this is an extension kind of the Hail to Stephen King Facebook Ka-Tet. It's our Facebook group. And so every month we pick a book and we gets to raiding, and that's basically how things go. It's a ton of fun. I really, really appreciate all of the positivity and the support, and this is always very fun for me. So I'm gonna let a few more filter in. My dude Corey Novak sounds professional, awesome. Mr. Duel says howdy, folks. Okay, I can hear you just fine, my boy. Awesome. Nicholas Adam is here. Can't stay on, but wanted to stop by and say what's up to our fearless leader of our Hail to Stephen King page. The Dead Zone is awesome. I second that notion, Nicholas. The Dead Zone is most definitely damn good. Draco Aris says, good afternoon. The Boogeyman is my favorite story of his. Interesting. They actually made a Dollar Baby of that is pretty good, as a matter of fact. And last I heard, they're actually trying to turn it into a feature once again. So, all right, what else do we got? Sharon Beveridge, long days and pleasant nights to you, Sharon. Greetings and good afternoon, good day, good evening. I'm not sure what part of the world you dwell within, but yes, I extend that love and that thanks to everybody for tuning in. And yes, once again, hoping the microphone is sounding a little bit better. And I guess since we're already about 10 minutes in, and I'm actually planning to go and see The Nightingale later this evening. So I guess I should probably get to this here in just a few minutes. And obviously, I have prepared my fair share of notes about this one. This book, guys, this is legit in my estimation. It's I'm with Malito, Mr. Buchanan, on there, because this is definitely like top tier King for me. And so before I just, you know what? Hell, I'm going to take a little sip of my beverage thing here, and then we will, also check this out, y'all. They just re-released this on newsstands. This is something called The Ultimate Guide to Stephen King. Yeah, the brightness is not where I would like it to be, but yes, they actually, where is it? Collector's edition, an update of a special edition. So yeah, they put this out last year, if I'm not mistaken, and I think it had like a very prominent cover of The Shining or something. I think Jack Nicholson, or I don't know. It was a different cover than this one. And yes, obviously with it Chapter 2 about to annihilate, slaughter the box office. Yeah, I think this was a very well opportuned re-release right there. So I picked that up yesterday, and yeah, that was pretty dope. So, all right, everybody. Well, I guess once again, I will take my little sip from my Mr. Stan Marsh. All right. I guess we will launch into things properly now. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime in Fuego. And if it please you, join me here for a bit of live palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That is right. So very stoked to have all of y'all here with me. You can just call me Fuego for short, and I cordially welcome you to the horror show. Myself, Cecil, Susie, and Marcia, the girls. Even though it's just me here, all of us collectively welcome you and are so happy to have you here to discuss my favorite author, as you can see by the tower of books that is seated behind me. Yes, hail to Stephen King indeed, and we are less than 2 weeks away from a brand new Stephen King book, The Institute, September 10th. I am so excited. But the matter of the day is the 40th anniversary of this little baby here, which my copy that I found at a Goodwill many years ago, it has been well read over the years. This was my fourth or fifth time rereading The Dead Zone, but I must say it is one of those Stephen King books that has just aged wonderfully. This book has aged. I mean, honestly, in some ways, I think this book is much more socially and culturally relevant today than it even was when it initially came out. And this is not to get all political stancy or anything. I mean, I'm a registered independent, everybody, so I'm not here to bash a president or anything of that nature, but there are some striking parallels to the Greg Stillson character and Donald Trump. It's pretty nuts. I mean, yeah, let's just go put all our trash and pollution stuff in, let's put that in space. That sounds like a great idea. I wouldn't put it past old Trumpy poo. But once again, yes, this is a book that it's so multi-layered in the fact that but it's also so simple, and I really have to give David Cronenberg mad creds because of the fact that David Cronenberg's adaptation of The Dead Zone, which King initially scripted, and apparently Cronenberg did not like King's script, and so it was completely redone by a couple of it. I think there were like 2 or 3 different rewrites. But long story short, Cronenberg's film is the perfect Stephen King adaptation because it really just trims the fat and keeps just about everything of our primary story intact. It does very, very minimalistic tinkering, and so if you love that exceptional movie, the great thing about this book is this book really just gives a ton of additional character information about, I mean, first and foremost, our boy Johnny Smith, who was portrayed perfectly by Mr. Walken, Kristopher Walken. And yes, but also a ton more information about his girlfriend, Sarah, who, he's out on this, date with at this like carnival fair type place, when he has his accident that sends him into a coma for 4.5 years. So you get tons of backstory about Sarah. You get tons of additional information about his parents, for instance, most notably his mother and the crazy, like just cult Christian alien. I mean, it's like seriously some Heaven's Gate type shit that his mom is into. And you find out all about that. And interestingly enough, even though in the film, Stillson, as very perfectly played by Mr. Martin Sheen, doesn't pop up until the second half of the film after they've dispatched Frank Dodd, the Castle Rock Strangler and everything. Oh, and yes, that's another thing of note to mention. This is the first Castle Rock story. This is what, just started the spark for Cujo and for Stand By Me, obviously, and, the body as it was in literary form. And then, later on, stuff like, Needful Things, which is underrated and exceptional. And, I mean, for better or for worse, the Hulu show, which I had very mixed feelings about, but that we also found out is going to be returning in October. So there you go. Your fall is going to be all Cy King, and you better like it. So, yeah, I mean, you just really get so much additional cool stuff, and the fact that you follow Stillson from the very beginning of the book as opposed to just meeting him in the second half of the film. I mean, it's almost like him and Johnny are on this like collision course towards each other, and the foreshadowing is really fascinating. And but obviously, before I start launching into my multiple pages of notes, because I've got my notebook of stuff, but then I've also got I'll just be at work at the day job, and I'll just jot notes down and interesting little insightful bits of information. But I'm going to take a double check here into the chat room real quick, and all the talking makes me thirsty. All right, so let's see who else has joined the proceedings since I launched into it. So, all right, who else do we have? Not really a lot of motion commotion in the ocean. Says Small Craft Advisory. Okay, I'm seeing it. Chapter 2 this Thursday, says Draco, and yeah, I'm actually seeing it on Tuesday. So we're very blessed to be in the position that the hard work has actually paid off and equated to getting to see movies early and for free. And so, yes, it does. Besides the monetization, and we've got our T-shirt store and all that silly stuff. I'd say more so than anything, just those perks of getting to see things early, and just I don't know, the honor and the just cool, humbling aspect of having your critical opinion respected enough to have them invite you. So it's pretty dope. Corey says, I pictured Alec Jones as Stillson. Oh, Alex Jones, you are a funny guy. So, well, in any event, I'm just going to kind of launch into my thoughts. And obviously, if you guys have some particular things about this book that you really enjoy, whether it's a certain beat in the book, whether it's, I don't know, it's already been mentioned in the chat that this is one of his best endings ever. I completely concur. I actually, per the request of somebody in the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, the Ka-Tet there, I actually did a video which was all about best Stephen King endings, or at least my personal favorite ones. And but I did it just for novels. So I'm actually at some point definitely going to do one for favorite, endings to maybe, I don't know, novellas and short stories and stuff like that. But so, okay. Draco says on Tuesday. Okay. Corey says, hey, you need to put the guitar back in the corner, looking a little blank in the background. Oh, why, thank you, sir. Yeah, I need to. I'm actually, as we approach episode 200 here in the coming months, this being 177 and everything. Yeah, I definitely am going to be doing another set redesign. There's a lot of stuff that I actually don't even have displayed. Some of it is hiding behind the bookshelf. There's also a whole nother level of all of my specialty King books that are on the very bottom, primarily Cemetery Dance, shout out. But yeah, so, okay, guys, I'm just going to launch into it and give my thoughts. We're going to get this rock-a-lockin'. So, published in August of 1979, and up to this point, King had done his short collection, Night Shift, which was all of the different stuff that he had written kind of pre-fame, and a couple new things as well. Jerusalem's Lot was a new one, one for the Road was a new one, but yeah, so that was most of those stories were King pre-fame, and they're all really dark and twisted stories. And obviously King had the notoriety from Carrie and from The Shining and Salem's Lot. And I guess The Stand was, more on the science fiction side with, sci-fi, post-apocalyptic and whatever. But I personally, as I was rereading The Dead Zone, it just kind of dawned on me that this was where King went from being a horror novelist to being legitimately a compelling writer of fiction. This was King writing the great American novel in a lot of ways, especially for the sheer fact that it spans the entire decade of the 70s. We have our prologue, which takes place, in the mid 50s. It's 55, 56, and 57, something like that. Anyway, that's where we initially, in the prologue, we meet Johnny, and that's where he's on the ice and he gets knocked by the hockey player and he hurts his head. And so that's what initially has this tiny bit of scarring on the brain that really, as you find out later in the book, and when he gets in the car accident and the taxi and all of that, it's that just pre-accident when he was an adolescent that kind of saved him and allowed him to actually make it through and have this sort of second sight ability that he possesses, and that really becomes apparent. He has it before the accident that puts him in the coma for 4.5 years, but it becomes very apparent and much stronger and much more gripping on every aspect of his existence after, awaking from those 4.5 years of sleep, basically. But yeah, it's cool in the prologue because besides getting that little bit of crucial information about Johnny, you also meet Stillson. And Stillson, you find out that he is a piece of garbage right off the bat because he's going door to door selling like Bible stuff and whatnot. But this dog comes and like barks at him and kind of like tries to attack him or whatever. And he kicks the dog to death at the beginning of the book in the prologue. And that's where it just really just sets a standard for the douchery of the Stillson guy. And you check back with him periodically. Like, even though it does primarily focus on Johnny, obviously, you always like you check back with Stillson throughout the entirety of his process as, you know, he goes from, you know, door-to-door Bible salesman to, you know, the next level up to becoming a, you know, member, like an aggressive member in the community and getting into politics, and then in turn becoming the mayor, and then in turn becoming a congressman, and just, you know, going higher and higher and higher and just bigger and aspiring larger and larger. And it's just, you also see his ruthless streak throughout the entirety of it, his predisposition to blackmail, the fact that I mean, hey, the Sunny guy that he blackmails into getting this biker gang of guys to be like his personal like security squad. I mean, he's like, yeah, I found these drugs, you goddamn hippies, you know, blah, blah, blah. I always think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I was like, fucking hippies, man, I hate hippies. So funny. And I obviously do not. I mean, look at me, for God's sake. But yeah, it's just interesting to see the rise of Stillson and the fact that that is counterbalanced. But what I find especially fascinating is how much more story we get for Sarah. We find out about Sarah's, and Sarah being a name that I love because that is the name of my mother. Sarah, we find out about the boyfriend she had before Johnny and how he was like kind of an abusive piece of crap, and he ended up going to Vietnam. And so, you know, that's interesting. And you get like a little bit more just internal dialogue about her teaching process compared to Johnny's and how they compare to each other, and how, you know, he just has a just breeze of a time with his students and she struggles with them. And also once, you know, the accident transpires, you know, they go on this date and, you know, it's very apparent that things are getting serious, but there is the weird foreshadowing of him putting on the mask and scaring her. And then, you know, they go on their date and she has the bad hot dog, but all of this kind of comes to, you know, like all fizzes up to the top when he's on the wheel of fortune-y thing, as I think they call it here, because the prologue is yeah, the prologue is very short as I breeze through this. Yeah, so it was called The Wheel of Fortune. I just wanted to double check. And that is actually apparent here on the cover for the original release, the hardcover here. Check it out. Yeah, so then like it's half of Johnny's face, and then the other half is like the wheel with all the numbers that right before, you know, he heads out after taking sick Sarah home, you know, he goes and he wins a ton of money from this guy. And this is where you first get the idea that there's something very special about Johnny because of the fact that he's like sensing the numbers that are going to come up, and it's really dope. And just the way it's funny, the older main guy who comes up and is like just egging on the carny and just pouring fuel on the fire of the situation. And yeah, it's like, he's gonna pay you out or my name ain't blah 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 blah. And it's just like, yeah, that's a good old boy for you. That's pretty funny. But so yeah, I mean, after the accident happens, and that is one difference, you know, between the book and between the film. In the film, Johnny is actually driving the vehicle himself, whereas in the book, he's in a taxi. The taxi driver is killed. You know, it's a bunch of kids drunken drag racing or something, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it's interesting because whereas in the movie, you know, you go right to him waking up after the time has passed. You know, seasons change, time passes by as the days become the months, become the years. I just have to reference South Park because they did a terrific Dead Zone homage. And it's where, again, like, no, take Cartman's face warmer off. They take the face warmer off. And that's when he hooks up with all of those other, like, psychic people. And it's just, it's so funny. I absolutely adore it. That's such a great episode where he's just like, no, 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 no. And so hilarious. And that's actually a Hail to Stephen King episode I've been wanting to put together for quite a while. It's been kind of ruminating in my head. I want to do an episode of all the Stephen King South Park references that they have done, from the history, and even the very first Halloween special, where or Or was it the second one? Maybe it was the second one. Yes, it was the second one where he's like, why would you build this on an Indian burial ground? I guess that's also like, that could pertain to The Exorcist and a few others. That was like a 70s horror trope, right? It was, oh yeah, they built the place on an Indian burial ground. You know, he's like, no, I didn't just build it on an Indian burial ground. I dug up all the bodies, pissed on them, and then reburied them before I built my store. Anyway, so yeah, the fascinating thing that we also get is it doesn't just go right to Johnny waking up. You get all of the in-between time. So you get the grief of his parents. You get his mother becoming more eccentric and leaving Hank the father, you know, or Herb or whatever his name is. I'm sorry, I know it's something with an H, but yeah. So and Vera is the mother's name. Anyway, yeah, she goes and joins the crazy Heaven's Gate cult, and she's subscribing to like all of the different magazines with shit like Bat Boy on there, and you know, I mean, yes, the scuzziest tabloids imaginable. And so, yeah, it's just it's very funny and just fascinating. Also, to say, I mean, Sarah, as she tries to, you know, just remain devout to Johnny with hopes that he will come out of the coma, and then as more and more time goes by, she just finally opens her heart up to going on a date, and you know, so on and so forth. It's once again, if these are characters that you wanted more information about and actually did care about beyond Johnny, you get so much more, man. You genuinely do. And since I haven't even really been consulting my notes, I've just been riffing through this. But yeah, as I mentioned, you know, this is where King really established himself as no longer being just a horror author. You know, he wrote the great American fiction novel, and you know, it's realistic and I mean, even the medical stuff after Johnny gets out of his coma. And they're talking about the procedure that he has to go through, where they're trying to fix his legs and put like the iron rods in them or whatever. Like just the way that like you could tell King did research about the medical process of some of these things. And I'm very glad that they retained my favorite line from the entire film. It's because I obviously saw the film first when I was a kid, and then, you know, I went on to reading the novel. But the fact that this is still my favorite quote in the entire thing. And I actually recorded Wyzak saying this in the film, and then I have been like, I used it in a few demos for songs with my first band when I was younger, but it still has to find its way into something. And it's, you are either in possession of a very new human ability or a very old one. Love that line so very much. Super cool. But yeah, and I mean, the world building aspect, as we touched on before, there is a mention of Jerusalem's Lot, the fact that we know this is Castle Rock. I believe this was the first novel where King really referenced the world building, because of the fact that, you know, The Stand took place all over. The Shining, you know, that's Colorado, obviously. But yeah, Salem's Lot, the fact that Jerusalem's Lot is mentioned in this is where King was finally starting to be like, okay, there's like all of these things are connected. There's like intrinsic, you know, kind of connective DNA of sorts about all of this, which is really cool. But the other reason that I contend that this is like him trying to write the great American novel is because of the fact that starting in the 70s and then, you know, going through to like 75 when he's finally waking up, because he gets in the accident in October of 70, and then he wakes up in 75, early 75. And it just, I mean, with the discussion of politics of the time, with the discussion of the fact that Johnny is like, yeah, you know what I did? I just read through all of these old like papers and magazines trying to catch myself up. He's telling this to Sarah when she finally comes to visit him. He's like, yeah, I went through years and years of all these magazines and papers and stuff trying to see all the people that I look up to who died, all the musicians and celebrities and stuff like that. And of course he mentions Joplin and Jimmy and, you know, stuff like that. But, and it's really all of those reflections of the 70s was such a tumultuous decade of like the up and the down aspect. And the fact that when he wakes up, it's in the back half of the decade. So this was written in 79, but it really is a reflection by King of the entire tumultuous decade of the 1970s. And so really fascinating in that regard. And I do feel like it's a rumination of all of that. And I also love the fact that, you know, the dead zone is it's really a reference at the end of the day to those lost pieces of memory in his damaged brain. And, you know, like beyond his own memories that are kind of fragmented to a degree, you know, the fact that when he does have these moments of like second sight and foresight and all that stuff, and, you know, like kind of psychic premonition, more or less, when he like touches people there's certain aspects that he can't like completely pinpoint and pick up on. And so he's just like, damn, that's, like I can see most of it, but, I can't see like specific like numbers sometimes and, certain words and whatnot. Like he can see the area and he can see the actions transpiring, but it's almost like kind of hazy, like kind of foggy. And so the dead zone is in fact those areas where he can't completely pinpoint things. I totally find that fascinating. And yeah, as I mentioned, Stillson and Johnny being on this collision course towards each other, and just, I mean, Stillson, besides the blackmailing, there's a scene where he tortures this kid, and it's really, really messed up. He's the mayor at the time, and so this prominent person who's presumably like one of his boosters or whatever, his kid is in some serious trouble for wearing an inflammatory shirt. And so Stillson is there to resolve things and, basically bail this kid out of this situation. The kid's acting like a little schmuck, very entitled, holier than thou, my shite don't stink, whatever kind of thing. And Stillson, he beats this kid up and he carves into him and stuff. It's really, man, it really, really shows just how maniacal and messed up he is. It's really, I mean, and there's a few different bits like that. Like there's another bit where he blackmails this guy who is having an affair with his wife because he needs campaign funding to really, really push for, Congress and then for, even larger aspirations beyond that. But another cool thing, not in the film, or at least not completely developed in the film, is the fact that we meet Richard Dees for the first time in this. Inside View is the tabloid that he works for, and Richard Dees is the main character. And who knows? I'm sure it'll pop up in the comments there in the chat ski. But yeah, Richard Dees is the main character in The Night Flyer. So he is a sleazy tabloid reporter, and we meet him very briefly when he goes and tries to basically hire Johnny to be one of their house psychics. And he's like, you don't even have to do anything. We have ghostwriters for all of these people, that we have on staff and blah, 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 blah. And, Johnny just ends up telling him off and talking all and, just really just ripping him a new one. But yeah, so this is from here on out, we actually have Inside View mentioned at least in a few different Psy King stories over the years. But yeah, this is the first appearance of said character, Richard Dees. And, this is another thing, and I purposely made mention of it here in my notes because I really wanted to. So after Johnny's fame starts to become apparent because of the fact that nurse touches his hand and, he's like, yes, your kid's going to be, okay. They're going to do the operation on his eye and everything will be just fine. So after his fame becomes apparent and people start sending him things, and some of them send stuff just, calling him phony. You're just a big phony. Yet there's others who they're like, I can't find this person, here's this, or I think my husband's cheating on me, or my wife's cheating on me. Here's her lipstick, touch it and, let me know for sure. But the one that really stuck with me because it's such a startling and unsettling situation is Johnny gets this scarf. And so he even mentions that in his internal dialogue, he's like, a lot of the time I touch this stuff and it doesn't do anything, but there are times occasionally when it does. He touches this scarf, and apparently the accompanying note was that, that this family, the brother had disappeared when he was on this camping trip, but they found a scarf. And so they're positive that maybe he's out there somewhere, he's living off the grid, doesn't want to be found, whatever the hell the situation may be. And so Johnny touches the scarf and he sees how this dude died. And this dude was out hunting or out camping, doing, just roughing it in the great outdoors. And he gets caught in quicksand. And just the way the situation is described it's fairly disturbing, I must say, especially because he's like, oh, I really am in quicksand. And then he's like, oh, now it's up to my knees. He's like, it's up to my waist, and I start struggling. And I know that I'm not supposed to be struggling if I'm in quicksand. And yet, he's like, and it's up to my neck. And then he goes to scream, but he can't even scream because of the fact that his mouth is getting filled with the quicksand, and he is like death staring it down right there. It's a very brief segue, but it really gets the point across of just the burden that Johnny must be bearing from having this sort of just sensory, just overwhelming aspect. And that's another thing that they do interestingly is before he awakens from the coma, it's written from his perspective. And there's like, I mean, seriously, it talks about the corridor that he's in, and I was trying to go to the light, and he's not 100% sure about all of these things. And it's just, I mean, it's just so much additional beefiness. It's like, you know, the Cronenberg film is very much like the important cliff notes of the situation. And yet, yeah, there is just so much more additional character development and interesting insight that we get from this. And so as I flip over to my next page, yeah, that's another crazy thing, is that his mother dies in the book, you know, and yeah, well, she dies in the movie too, or at least she's lost already, if I remember correctly. It's been a hot minute since I've watched the film, but I do know, obviously, when he reconnects with Sarah and whatnot, that's where, you know, Mama Bear is no longer around, unfortunately. But yeah, the father remarries in the book. It's like, and I mean, he was butting heads with the wife for a long time, especially over her wacky religious UFO fanaticism and stuff like that. But a couple other notes that I have here. Yep, it did cover Johnny's coma, obviously. Sarah getting married, the update on Stillson, you know, the killer striking. This is another thing you also get from our Castle Rock Strangler's perspective. Like, you get the first taste of him when he commits his first murder, and it's written from his perspective, from Frank Dodd's perspective, and it's fascinating in that regard. It totally is. It's a word I'm going to keep coming back to. So yeah, that was pretty cool. You just basically get like primers and updates on all of these different things, and it just it enriches the experience so significantly. And I mean, you know, that was another thing when he's doing the Wheel of Fortune early on. I thought it was really funny that the last bit, you know, the last number where he wins like the biggest amount of money, when he's like, you know, all in, all or nothing, whatever. It's the number 19, of course. Okay, you know, as I look at these notes, I pretty much covered everything, not even having to consult these. So these are getting all crumbled up, and they are, yes, 2 points, Electric Avenue. I'm actually going to take another peek into the chat here, because I'm about halfway through the notes. We are 30 and some change into the broadcast. I want to see if any of y'all have some insight, thoughts on all of this silliness. And pretty sure I saw the horror show there. Okay, holy shit! You aren't yelling across the room. Sounds way better. That is our fearless leader, Cecil Laird. Okay, what else do we have on here? Okay, so I'm going to catch up on some of the... Okay, so Malito says, interesting fact, I remember Joe Hill saying in a Facebook Live interview for Strange Weather 2 years ago that Dead Zone was his father's favorite book. Well, King has gone on record to say Lisi's story is his favorite book a few different times, but I would imagine it's like having a favorite kid. Maybe, you know, it's like maybe you love one more when they're behaving better, and then your kid gets in some shit, and it's like, oh, yeah, we're not liking you very much anymore. I actually like the second more and more so. Corey says it was his dad's favorite book or Joe's favorite book. Maybe, I'm not sure. But King at one point in the early 80s also said it was his favorite book. Yeah, changed his opinion many times. Yep, exactly. Just like I said. Corey retorts with, it's funny how it's Joe's favorite book because King dedicates the book to Owen. Yes, he does, indeed. I should check that out. But yeah, funny, so on and so forth. Okay. Wholeheartedly endorse the South Park King homage. Yes, it's going to happen. So happening. Draco says, I love connected universe stories, and it's great that Stephen King made his own connected universe. Damn right. And Draco, just to address that a little bit further, that's the reason why I started reading all of King's work in the first place, was when I found out that so many of these books connected together. And I mean, I'd already read my favorites like The Stand and It and Pet Sematary. And yet when I found out all of the interconnectivity and the full scope of it, I was like, I have to start at the very beginning and read everything in its published order just to get the full experience and the proper accord and interest and whatnot. And so, yeah, that, I mean, King was definitely one of the, long before the MCU was doing it, you know, I mean, he was rocking that chisel proper. Sharon says he really had a struggle to stop when he carved him. Yeah, he definitely did. Stillson, when he was carving up that kitty. Okay, so Corey says, the scene that got me the most was when King was talking about how the 9-year-old was raped and strangled. That may be the most disturbing scene I've read yet by King. Yeah, that was genuinely horrible. And when I read it, I was just like, yeah, that's bad. But I was listening to it. I was listening to the audiobook that James Franco reads, which much better. Franco, much better than I was expecting. He actually did a pretty terrific job on this audiobook. But I was listening to that part out loud while I was walking around the house on my phone, and my girlfriend hears it, and she's just like, oh, like she was very unsettled at that at that sentiment. Anyway, yes, back to Fearless Leader saying, yes, I don't sound like I'm shouting across the room because I'm not shouting across the room anymore. Isn't it great? I just had to apply some dedication and figure some things out. Okay. Mark says, hey, Fuego, hope you're well, dude. Mark, I hope, Mr. Father Bear, as you are, that you are doing well. I know it's super late on your side of the world, man, but shout out to Mr. Pearson, one of my favorite people in the YOU the Ka-Tet. I hope you're doing great as well, my friend. Sharon says, yeah, that was some tough reading, but it sets a tone and mood, obviously commenting on and it gives like honestly, the only other thing I can comparably compare it to is the stuff in The Outsider with the crime that dude is accused of, and just also being a boy and just, I mean, horrible stuff. I struggle to even contemplate that kind of stuff. It's a comparable, just gross unsettlingness, but it really just gives that much more inherent, just, I don't know, like you have to catch this person. If he is stooping to that level to, like not only kill and rape, but to do it to children, like this is like beyond vile, like far, like it's a new level of vile, seriously. And so I think as tough as it is to read, it had to be in there. And I mean, yeah. Okay. Sentient, how, Draco? Your channel has become sentient. Anyway, so I'm going to launch into my further thoughts. There's a line at the end of the book where, oh man, Johnny is getting ready to go and do what he does, and what transpires at the very end. And he's sitting having a beer in this place in, I believe it's New Hampshire, if I remember correctly, where the actual confrontation with him and Stillson goes down. But the line is, the beer joint was filled with the ghosts of dead hamburgers. I don't know why I find that line so funny, but it's one of King's little isms that just sets a mood, and you can the smell and the sound, and I mean, I can like hear the grill crackling a little bit, and just that scent of charred cow in the air and everything, and like that like stale beer and everything. It's like it's very simple, but yet so descriptive and really cool in that regard. But so yeah, I mean, after all this stuff goes down with Johnny's powers, becoming, at least a known fact after this interview that he does with all these reporters, and he guesses this one thing with this one reporter, and the reporter freaks out. And after the Richard Dees thing transpires, Dees goes and does like a staff writer writes that, yes, Johnny Smith is a fraud, and so people start to kind of leave him alone. But that's when we meet Sheriff Bannerman. That's right. And Bannerman is actually killed in the next book, Cujo, by the flippin' St. Bernard man. So, and that's where Pangborn takes over afterwards, and we get him in various things and whatnot. But yeah, so Bannerman, who was awesomely played by... I want to say Tom Skerritt, maybe. I don't know. He was in Alien as well, and he went and he did this like about the same time. Boy, I think they came out in the same year. I want to say. I think they were both 79 movies, if I'm not mistaken. But he's great as Bannerman in the Cronenberg film, and just at the behest of Wyzek, who did. It's a really sweet friendship kind of thing that goes down with him and Johnny, and I feel like it's decently represented in the film, but it's very apparent their kinship in the book, especially with him wearing the little thing on his jacket, so that when Johnny's going in for the surgery, like he can look up and see that Wyzek is up there and being involved. And that's another really cool thing that he does, and that is perfectly represented in the book, is where he touches Wyzek, and he's like, your mom is still alive, and he has a flashback to the stuff in World War II. That's super cool. It's also funny how the other doctor's name is James Brown, and he's like, yeah, it's just like the singer, blah 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 blah. So that's dope. But yeah, so at the behest of Wyzek, that Bannerman reaches out to Johnny, and he really kind of wraps up the case pretty quickly. He figures out it's Dodd it's pretty quick, and it almost feels like it's a little more drawn out in the film than it actually is in the book. Like in the book, he figures that shizzle out pretty quickly, and Bannerman gets pissed at him, and he's like, no, there's no way Frank Dodd, of course, with Frank Dodd, actually being on the force with him and everything. But it's when they go and they consult those records where, oh, when this murder happened, where was he? Was he on duty? No, off duty, or he's on leave or whatever. So every single thing synced up and lined up with him being responsible, which is just, yeah. But so that's where Bannerman kind of gives some credence to Johnny's foresight about the situation. They in turn go and they confront him. And it's very well done in the film, as it is well done here in the book. He goes and, they confront him, and he's killed himself. So, he just kind of knew the jig was up, and the fact that his mother had been covering for him. It's just really, really horrible stuff. And, very messed up in that aspect. But so, yeah, after the suicide of Dodd, years go by here as Johnny, shifts from like he was trying to get his teaching license back. Well, not get his teaching license back. He was actually offered a job in the spring after, waking up and getting through the situation in the rehab and the recovery. But after he helps catch Dodd, he's almost punished for his assistance in the process because, the school board determines, no, we don't want somebody, with this sort of reputation and just kind of connection and the whispering hearsay and all that other stuff. Yeah, they're not down with it, and so he ends up having the job offer rescinded, and so he can't get back into teaching. And so years pass, and it shifts up to him being this private instructor for this kid who has a learning disability, who is very, very popular athlete, dating the hot chick, super rich, and yet he has a learning disability. And so Johnny is tutoring him. Johnny has this great relationship with this kid and, with the father and everything. And another character that's not in the film, but Johnny strikes up this friendship with this groundskeeper from Vietnam. And this is where we actually get the second portion of the book, which is called The Laughing Tiger. And this guy makes the analogy. I'm trying to remember his name. It's like Nong Fa or something like that. But yeah, so basically the dude tells him about this game that they would play back in Vietnam. And it's where one of the kids would dress up like a tiger and roam around and growl, and the other kids would run away and scream and stuff. And so he makes this interesting connotation with Stillson being this tiger. And this is where Johnny's fascination is starting to grow with Stillson, because he gets a weird vibe from him when he sees him and commercial or whatever. But it's when he goes to his campaign rally and actually touches him. And this is in what we get in the second half of the movie, where he has that premonition about the fact that he is going to be instrumental in starting World War III. And they do that scene very well in the film where, Martin Sheen as Stillson is pressuring, his second in command, or, the head of the Senate or Congress, something. I can't remember the branch of the government specifically that it is, but yeah, just to, hand over the keys and, turn the dial and, let's launch these nukes. Let's nuke them, baby. So that's essentially what Johnny decides. He's like, I have to avert this somehow, some way. And it's just really interesting, the fact that, the Laughing Tiger is what Stillson is compared to. And Johnny even has a nightmare about this weird roaming tiger and stuff. It's kind of crazy. But so yeah, that's another just cool little interesting bit of additional information and insight that we get in the book that's not actually in the film. So yeah, and after meeting Stillson, he does go straight up stalker, let's be honest here, and he segues into this research of Stillson's entire life. And it's funny because it segues into basically Johnny writing this it's I don't know, going through almost like a biography of sorts of this guy. And it chronicles his brutal rise to power through intelligent manipulation and all the things that I'd mentioned before. How he starts out as this unloved child, how he got into, juvenile delinquents and, robbing and petty crime and stuff like that. But then he found out about being a rainmaker of all things, and he becomes this Christian rainmaker. And he goes, he's in the Midwest at the time. I'm trying to remember. I want to say it's Iowa, maybe, or maybe Ohio. Anyway, he's somewhere in the Midwest, and So he goes and he dances and he like almost blackmails these people, and when rain comes 2 days later into paying them a bunch of money because they want to shortchange him initially, and they're like, yeah, that rain was going to come anyway. And then he goes and he publishes this article, and this article essentially forces those who are refusing to give him any money after his rain dance and rain coming 2 days later, they pay him this large sum of money. And then in turn, he becomes this, the liar, manipulator, blackmailer becomes more apparent. He gets into the born-again Bible business. And then the only time where he didn't succeed was when he moved to New York and he became a failed actor. And that's just another thing that plays into this persona that he adapts, the hard hat guy on the political trail and everything. And he becomes an insurance salesman. And that's where, things kind of go blank for a little while as far as just, the Stillson that we're aware of. But then again, he segues into the aspiring politician work and the fact that he makes these bold suggestions about how, hey, instead of locking up drug users, let's make them do community service. And that becomes a big positive thing for, people who want to see him just rise throughout the political ranks. And then, he makes metered selections about just having it be a donation process and people feeling more inclined. He becomes the mayor. And then this is the one where his campaign trail slogan, the fact that it's "Let's build a better Ridgeway." Yeah. Does that sound like anyone y'all know? So, I mean, it's once again, you just get so much more insight to Stillson and his political process and just his ruthlessness, I guess. And yeah, the use of force, the budget cuts, all of these different things. I mean, it all just kind of correlates with somebody that I know. And that's where, and Johnny basically gets to the point where, and he even proposes this question to his kid that he tutors and, a few other people. He's like, would you travel through time to kill Hitler? And it's like, it's kind of the similar theme, obviously, that King explored, with 11/22/63. Would you go back in time to try to stop JFK from being killed? Would you try to stop that assassination? And yet often you don't necessarily think the sort of reverberations, as we find out in 11/22/63, that something of that magnitude could bring about. But yeah, that's the question that he basically proposes to himself is, would I travel back in time to kill Hitler? And it's just, I don't know. It all comes to a head really in the fact that he has this premonition about this lightning strike and this fire at this graduation party that the kid that he tutors and like all of the seniors are supposed to be going to. He begs and pleads for him not to go. Some of the kids decide to go to this small gathering that they have at their super rich house instead. But yeah, the lightning does in fact strike. The fact that Johnny predicted it, that goes on record and becomes public knowledge. So he actually leaves Castle Rock. And where does he go? He goes to the PHX. That's right. He goes to Phoenix. And he's working with like the Department of Motor Vehicles, like painting roads and stuff like that, doing his thing. Really fascinatingly enough, though, there is actually mention of none other than Don Bowles. Now, for those who don't know who Don Bowles is, and I mean, maybe 30, 40 years ago, like it was public knowledge, like in, across the country, obviously not anymore. I just so happened to work at the hotel where Don Bowles was killed. Don Bowles was a journalist in the late 1970s who was basically barking up the wrong tree. He was sniffing out all of these different mobsters, many of which hung out at this high-class steakhouse called Durant's, which is about 2 miles from my hotel. And so, yeah, he was sniffing out these mob guys. And what did they do? They put a car bomb just outside the place where I do a few days a week at the day job to maintain my health insurance and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, Don Bowles is mentioned by Cy King in this book. And I just thought, I mean, this was 1979. The crime had just taken place a couple of years before. So it was obviously public enough knowledge for Stephen King to put in the Dead Zone. So I thought that was pretty dope. And yeah, so you basically, it breezes over Johnny's time in Phoenix just very, very quickly, in all honesty. And most of it you actually find out through notes from the Dead Zone, which is the epilogue, which the epilogue of this book, after the confrontation with Stillson. The epilogue of this book, and the fact that it's like court transcriptions of like testimony and dissertation and stuff like that. It's also letters, like letters that Johnny writes before he goes after Stillson. He writes a letter to Sarah, writes a letter to his father. And I mean, it's fascinating in that regard, but it really structures itself, the epilogue, Notes from the Dead Zone, very much so like Carrie. It's and just the fact that it's all of these different pieces of information, between letters and court documents and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty dope. But yeah, it's in Phoenix where he kind of bides his time. He finds out that he has a brain tumor and that he is terminal. He only has X amount of time to live, which I do not recall being in the film, although it has been a little bit since I watched the movie. But I don't think they explore Johnny having this terminal tumor or anything. It's not a tumor! Anyway, but yeah, so while he's in Phoenix, that's where he decides to get his artillery together, hop on the train, and go after Stillson on the campaign trail. And that's essentially, he doesn't end up killing Stillson. He ends up being killed in the process. But Stillson, when he sees somebody is trying to assassinate him, he picks up a child, and there's a photograph taken, ironically enough, by the same kid that Johnny is talking to earlier in the day, which is really just total irony for you. But yeah, he gets killed, and unlike in the film where Sarah and her husband are boosters of Stillson and they're actually at the rally where the assassination attempt transpires, that doesn't happen here. It's just basically, he sends his letter out to Sarah, and he sends his letter out to his father, letting them know, this is why I did what I did. And he explains to them just, hey, I had this premonition. I saw what I needed to do. And I actually, my solo album that I've been working on and off for many years, between the various bands that I've been in, it's honestly very heavily inspired by the Dead Zone. It's essentially about somebody who has a psychedelic epiphany and they avert the destruction of the world. But the hook in one of the last songs, which is called A Sad Departure for a Valiant Fighter, the hook to the song is a sacrifice that's never known. And that's the cool thing about Johnny Smith's character, is he makes this monumental sacrifice of his life for the greater good, and yet it's one that so few, with the exception of Sarah and his father, obviously nobody else is going to really know the magnitude of what he is able to avert and the selflessness that he exudes in this. And it's such a great book. God, I love this book. Like, so much more than I even realized. Every time I reread it, I remember why it's in my top 10, easily in my top 10. It probably pushes on the top 5, although the top 5 are, it might be, it's right there with like Salem's Lot and Revival and Under the Dome for that 5th position. It's tough to decide, because the unholy trinity, as I all too often say, Pet Sematary, It, and The Stand, and then it's probably a tie between Dark Tower 3 and 4, right after that. But man, the Dead Zone, Salem's Lot, they're like right there. But this is really just, it's not a full-on horror book. It really is. It's a thriller, but more so than anything else, it is just a seminal celebration of the 1970s. And it is just, I adore this book. And I really, really am hopeful that y'all either read it or listened to it at some point over the course of this last month of August. And so I'm going to jump back to the chat, but that is sitting at nearly an hour now. That's the extent of my thoughts, and there are some announcements here at the end of the live video. But I'm getting ready to go see the Nightingale here a little bit later, so I'm going to take another sip of my drink real quick and see what y'all have had to say as I launch through the end of my thoughts. Yeah. So, all right, where are we at? Okay, so not much chatter, actually. Okay. Corey says, I actually related to Johnny when King was describing the pain and illnesses that were caused by his brain tumors. Oh, damn, Corey, crazy. Corey says, I was born with a tumor in my right, wasn't cured till I was 4. No, I'm 100% deaf in an ear. Damn, dude. Well, power to you for soldiering on and everything. My best friend growing up, his younger brother had a brain tumor when he was like 2, maybe 3 years old. And yeah, had to be operated on. It was cut and dry. They didn't know if he was going to make it or not. Yeah, Corey, let's build that wall. Yeah, that tripped me out a little. How about the America Now movement? Kind of prescient. Yeah. Startling similarity. Yeah, yeah. That's why, you see, that's why I say that this book has more, and I would honestly say remake it at this point, but they already remade it as a TV series with Anthony Michael Hall, who is going to be in Halloween Kills as Tommy Doyle, which is interesting. Too bad they couldn't get Paul Rudd back, but but I don't know. Would you guys have interest? It's been on the docket for a while. The two shows that I have wanted to give some Hail to Stephen King coverage to that I have not, because they're like extensions of things. I've wanted to do The Dead Zone, and I've wanted to do Haven. So those are two shows that I know Marsha has watched. Haven. I'm not sure if Marsha or Cecil. I know Susie hasn't watched any of these shows, but I'm not sure if Marsha has watched any of the Dead Zone show. I know that it just basically expands on so very much, and they do actually do their own adaptation of the events in the book itself, but it's just, I don't know, it lasted like 5 or 6 seasons, so it was obviously popular enough on either USA or TNT, one of those, to warrant that sort of extensiveness. But okay. Appreciated the phenomenon ratings, telling and writing with it on this reread. Yeah, fantastic. Yes, the PHX. I remember you talking about the murder of that journalist on Getting to Know the Horror Show episodes. Yes, Malito, I've talked about that quite a few times. The very last scene of Sarah at the, and this is what I was just kind of saving to the end to actually mention. The ending where Sarah goes to the cemetery, and they have this stupid running joke throughout where he's just like, cut back on the cocaine, Sarah, blah, blah, blah. You're going to need a fresh nose, or, whatever. And he jokes it, and she's like, no, I've actually, upgraded to heroin. Like, they have this weird, like, sense of comedy between them about drug use, which I'm just like, oh, Psy King, you were using so much cocaine at this time. Like, you crazy old baddie. But, okay. Melita says, Fuego, you should cover Ghost Brothers of Darkland. Well, Ghost Brothers of Darkland is right there on the very top, and that is an episode I've also been sitting on doing for quite a while, because I have my Hail to Stephen King, production notes that are all kinds of different ideas for upcoming episodes and anniversaries of books and films and all this other stuff. But yeah, the very end where Sarah visits his grave, and she feels Johnny's presence for a second there, and she even thinks that she sees him for a moment, and it's touching, it's sad, and it legit teared me up. This is maybe, as far, like, there's startling effed up endings like Pet Sematary, but then there's endings that are just really bittersweet and kind of sad, and this one and the ending to It are two of the best that come to mind, that just leave you with that sort of, like, I don't know, hitch in the feels, as my dude Cecil would say. So, yeah, I guess really, unless anybody has any other non-Dead Zone related questions to kind of throw out their AMA status, I'm just gonna kind of wrap things up then, because it is we've been going for just about an hour now, and it's 5:30, and yeah, I definitely want to extend a grande gracias for anybody who tuned in today, and obviously to Psy King for writing this incredible book that I think doesn't get the attention it deserves, because of the fact that it's not a full-on horror book, okay? And the fact that it's not a full-on horror book is one thing that, everybody talks about Carrie and The Shining and Pet Sematary and stuff like that. This is not a scary book, but it's such rich and very touching storytelling from King, and I absolutely adore it. And it's it's a brisk read. It's very well paced, and I'm just seeing all this sad, like, little rips on the back of my cover, because yes, this has been a very well loved and well read book by myself. And having got it at a Goodwill, I would imagine it got some significant usage out of somebody else even before that. But yeah, everybody, I guess that is going to be the end of the proceedings. However, there is most definitely something that I have to mention here at the very end. So, Stephen King has a new book coming out in 10 days called The Institute. But The Institute is not going to be the book of the month, because honestly, I am not going to wait until the end of September to review that book. I am going to crush that book as quickly as possible. I have both the book pre-ordered and the audiobook pre-ordered, so I'm going to get right to that. and hopefully in a couple days after it is available, I will have a review for that. It comes out on a Tuesday. I'm hoping it will be the review by Saturday, but honestly, I'm gonna try to get it up by like Thursday or Friday, if at all possible. It's 500 and some change, so it's a long book, but if I really apply myself, I know I can get it done in a couple of days. So for that reason, I'm not going to wait until the very end of September to do that. So this is the thing, everybody. There are 6 big-time anniversaries that happen between now and the end of the year for Stephen King novels, okay? There is one in September, and originally it was going to be the September book of the month, but as I looked at all of the other books that are coming later this year, we have 4 more months in the year, and we have 6 of these big-time anniversary books. So that means we got to trim some fat. We got to get 2 of these books out of the rotation. I'll probably still end up reviewing them just myself, but I just won't deem them the designated book of the month. So the 6 selections are, first and foremost, Insomnia. Insomnia came out in 1994. That is seeing its 25th anniversary this upcoming month in September. And so initially I was like, oh, a return to dairy, it would be perfect, it'd be befitting. October has an anniversary of 30 years. Oh my God, I feel so old. The Dark Half, fantastically made into a film by none other than George Romero. Rest peacefully, sir. I'm very blessed that I got the chance to speak with you at Scarefest when I did. So that was original. So originally I was going to be like, okay, so in October, we've got The Dark Half, and in September, we have Insomnia. But the problem is that there are 4 very significant anniversaries in the month of November. And so this is why we have to trim some fat, because in November, we have an anniversary for Richard Bachman's Thinner. We have an anniversary for Under the Dome. We have an anniversary for The Talisman. And we have an anniversary for Revival. And obviously, we have to do Revival. I mean, come on. It's like, come on. So there is no anniversary, ironically, of novel release in December. So when I get done with this video and I have my computer set back up in the Chiron Cavern, I am going to make a poll on the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. And those are going to be your 6 choices. And the poll is going to run until... I'll probably run it through Labor Day the more I think about it, just to give everybody the chance if they don't see this video. So we are going to have those 6 selections, and whatever wins out voting-wise by the end of Labor Day, which here in the States is Monday, September 2nd, that is going to be our September book of the month. We're going to run a similar poll for the month of October, for the month of November, and the month of December, but the winner is just going to obviously be taken off of the slate. And we are going to whittle our way down to 4 of those 6 books. So jump on to the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group. If you are not a member, I'm the sole admin and moderator on there. And I would love so very much to have your palaver there. And yes, that's where the poll is going to be going up. So yes, it's really the only thing I use the Facebook for, aside from, the horror show and Chirons and Fuego Tainment stuff. So yes, cast your votes. Once again, the 6 selections will be Insomnia, The Dark Half, Thinner, The Talisman, Under the Dome, and Revival. We have to get that list of 6 down to 4, and the winner is going to be decided by all of you over the next few months throughout the rest of the year. So very much looking forward to that. So I have been Jaime and Fuego. You can find me on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, but not just here on The Horror Show. So I have my own YouTube channel where I cover everything that's not of the spooktacular variety. Obviously, The Horror Show is of scarific importance, and so you will definitely still see more videos of me there. But if you want stuff of the non-spooktacular variety, like indie films and some comedies and dramas and, the occasional action film. Most recently, I did a review of The Peanut Butter Falcon, which is this little indie darling produced by the people who did Little Miss Sunshine. But I balanced things out with a review of Good Boys, which is one of only a handful, like less than 5. There's only a couple movies I've seen twice this year, and one of them was Endgame. And hey, another one was Good Boys. So hey, I've got a review of Good Boys on there, as well as all kinds of Star Wars coverage as we lead up to The Rise of Skywalker. So that is in Fuegotainment, or you can just go youtube.com/Jaime and Fuego. But obviously, you are here on the horror show, and we are so very stoked that you have made a brief appearance. I know Cecil and Mercer earlier today, being Saturday, did their Rick and Morty episode. So if you are down for some of that, please, once this live stream is done with, go and check out that. They have tons of awesomely hilarious Rick and Morty coverage. We also have trailer reactions this past week to Underwater, to Antlers. There is some really awesome looking horror coming through the pipeline later this year. And I know Cecil and I are going to be reviewing the follow-up from the Babadook director, The Nightingale, because that is actually what I'm getting ready to go see here in about an hour. So yes, if you haven't liked and shared and subscribed here as well, myself, Cecil, Susie, Marcia, the entire team here at the Horror Show, we are supremely appreciative. And lastly, if you guys like box office discussion, the one other thing that I will reference is that on Monday evenings, our buddy CP on the Willis Screedia YouTube channel welcomes myself and Lindsay Mimsey for a show called Show Business, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And that's where we talk about weekend box office, both in the prior weekend and we look ahead. Once again, that's every Monday on the Willis Screedia YouTube channel, 9 Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific. But that is going to be the end of our palaver for today, everyone. And I guess I shall finish, as I always do, by saying until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos, and constant readers and viewers alike. I'm hopeful that we get to share more of this banter all about my favorite author sooner rather than later. But until that instance transpires, remember to stay scared and read Stephen fucking King. All right, everybody. 'Twas a pleasure and an honor as always. And I will just give one more look. Okay, so glad I was off and able to be here. Yes, I was glad you were here as well, Sharon. Thank you so very much. The Lord's work. You are too funny. All right, I already have votes from Malito for Revival, and I've got one from Curtis for The Talisman. But yes, I am going to call an ending to these proceedings, and just much love, everybody. Thanks so very much. Gracias, danke, arigato, merci, and yes, let's get to the polls, and don't vote Stillson. Fuck that guy. Bye.